and he met somebody in London, that's not good enough. I know how to ensure that your client gets the right verdict. And I have been trying so hard to contact him, to speak to him. I have repeatedly made calls, and he has not taken any of my calls. He is being very arrogant. What does he think of himself? Now these are the concerns of an editor. Why should he be going out of his way when he should be thinking about public interest issues, and his heart should be beating for what concerns our country, what concerns the masses of our people. But he is, by his own admission, repeatedly making calls to this industrialist to help him out, to help him fix the judiciary, to fix the Supreme Court, no less. And the Supreme Court, I mean, this is a matter of public knowledge. I think Prashant has even put this conversation before the court. They never took cognizance of it. They never felt slighted by it. On the other hand, when somebody like Prashant speaks about the corruption in the judiciary, they take great offense to that. So the point I'm making is that this editor who spoke in this manner is an example of access journalist. Now, this is that breed which thrives on their having access to people in high places, and they exploit that access, that information they have for their own vested interests, not necessarily in the public interest, but that arbitrage, all these things that they can exploit, they are there for that. They have become some kind of racketeers, much like what many of the lawyers have today turned into. And since there was mention about the bar, I may, while I am on the subject, in fact, why should I make an issue of not naming that lawyer, that editor, because his name was very much there out in the open, Prabhu Chawla. Now, why do I mention Prabhu Chawla? Because subsequent to this scam, Radia Tapes, he was booted out of his organization because it suddenly became very embarrassing. Now, his son, the reason I mention Prabhu Chawla's name is because it's very significant that just a month prior to the disclosure of Radia Tapes, his son was charge sheeted by the CBI in a corruption matter. Now, somebody was saying, lawyers come in an inebriated condition to the courts and argue, should they not be hauled up by bar counsel? Now, I am citing an example of a lawyer who has been found by an investigating agency to be involved in a corruption case. He has even been charge sheeted, and he is still very much practicing. There is no complaint, no suo motu action, nothing taken by the bar council. I mean, you have such kind of bizarre things going on with the bar, and that is reflected in the media. So you have this degradation of institutions all around, and this commercialization that has gripped the bar, it's very much reflected in the media too. So as a result, those who have instincts of watchdog journalists, they are being pushed to the sidelines. It is these access journalists who have taken over our profession, which is the reason why a journalist like Barkhadat did not find it odd that when a corporate lobbyist is very openly trying to interfere with government formation, she was only trying to use that as an opportunity to get information from her. But she did not think it necessary to do a story on this very bizarre situation of a corporate lobbyist trying to interfere with the prerogative of the Prime Minister. That is a bigger story. But if that did not occur, it is because our instincts as watchdog journalists are getting blunted, and we are becoming more and more, even the best of us are becoming more and more of access journalists. How do I use this opportunity? Oh, I have no less than Neera Radia, who is the lobbyist of Tata, this Ambani. She herself is calling me and she's giving me inside information on what is happening inside DMK. So I should exploit this for the immediate gain of doing a story. That she's missing out on a larger story. No, why should I, ruin this opportunity by doing that kind of a story and endanger this great access I have? The same way Prabhu Chawla, saw the vulnerability of judges the access that judges provide to racketeers in the bar or in the bench, in the media to themselves, that he sees it as an opportunity to peddle influence, to become more important. He does not see that as a weakness in the system that is going to harm public interest. No, for him it's an opportunity to be exploited for personal gains. Now, in this situation where access journalists have taken over the media, judicial reforms has become a casualty. I mean, for us, that the judiciary has these weaknesses would only give us an opportunity. We are happy to go along with this myth that everything is fine with the judiciary. And if there are some adventurous journalist who takes on the judiciary, say for instance, after the Contempt of Court Act was amended, and one very salutary provision was introduced saying that truth can be cited as a defense in a Contempt of Court case. Now, the first such case that came up was in the context of an expose done on former Chief Justice of India, Sabharwal, soon after his retirement. It was reported by an intrepid journalist from Midday, Vitusha Oberoi, that his sons, during the time he was running this campaign, running this drive of sealing in Delhi, his son had business links with a mall developer and therefore was benefiting from this sealing drive. Had this information, had this story come out while this man was still in office, it would obviously have been impossible given the kind of the resentment that was there in a section of business class and others over this drive. It would have been impossible for Justice Sabharwal to carry on with it. Now, that itself should have been reason enough for courts to accept in good grace that, look, some irregularity committed by a judge has come out in the open and you accept it. But that's not how it was dealt with. Now, a paragon of virtue called R.K. Anand, whose exploits you might or might not be aware of, he files a petition before the Delhi High Court to uphold the majesty of the Delhi High Court's reputation, and one Justice Sodhi takes it up with great alacrity, and then they, even though somebody like Prashant pointed out that truth was on their side, so if you want to test this, now let's go into the veracity of the allegations made in that report. The judge wouldn't go into that at all. On some technicality, he was happy to say, no, it is contempt. He totally sidestepped this issue of whether the reports were truthful and whether the journalists concerned were therefore entitled to take that as a defense. Now, what were people like me meanwhile doing? I'm sorry to confess that while this was going on, there was nothing I in the Times of India could do about it. Why? Because it was a contempt of court proceedings and no responsible editor. Mind you, it's evidence of this access journalism mentality creeping into our profession. No responsible editor would want any criticism of the judiciary on that subject. Now this happens over and over again. I mean, I can cite any number of examples of this kind of self-censorship being exercised by us, undue caution being exercised by us at the expense of public interest, at the expense of this issue of judicial reforms not getting the attention it deserves. I think I've exceeded my time limit, so I will wind up. Thank you very much.